Good morning. I'm Tim Smith. I serve as chair of the board of Shared Interest, and I'm very pleased to facilitate this topical webinar with some really excellent panelists who are going to share some of their experiences with us. This webinar is part of Shared Interest Community Conversations on Racial Justice series. It's going to be a series that we're producing, and we hope will be particularly helpful for Black colleges. Um, I have worked in an investment firm for the last 20 plus years, working on impact investing. And now I work at the Interfaith Center on Corporate Responsibility, which is a faith-based group, but it's a coalition of religious investors and other investors focused on social and sustainability issues. So let me first of all frame the premise of our conversation today. Then I'm going to ask the speakers after I've uh, said their names and titles. I'm going to ask them to give a brief elevator speech about who they are. Later on, we'll talk more about your organizations and what you do, but who you are. So here's the context for our discussion today. I think we all believe that the impact of COVID-19, which has been combined with natural disasters and growing political polarization, has exacerbated the growing inequalities which are experienced by Black and economically disenfranchised communities, both in the US and Southern Africa. Impact investing, which is investing, creating both social impact and financial returns, is a critical factor for increasing a flow of capital, of monies, to underserved communities and to stimulate job growth and entrepreneurial innovation and promote sustainable and inclusive development. So, for decades, investors have used their investments to drive positive change. We describe this as impact investing on this webinar, but we're also going to talk about community development investing and investing for community impact. You might remember, some of you, the history of investors standing up and challenging companies in apartheid South Africa, urging that they cut their ties to the land of apartheid. A very successful campaign that helped, according to Nelson Mandela, bring the government, the minority government, to the table and have a, a transition which put Nelson Mandela in power. So that was in the 1990s. And since that time, we've seen, we're going to hear from our experts, the real growth of community development investing and impact investing too. So we're going to talk about the power and potential of impact investing in Black and economically disenfranchised communities. And as you've heard, both in the United States and Southern Africa. So you're going to hear about the current landscape and what's driving it too. So jumping into our resource people, our panelists today, a very knowledgeable group, very deeply immersed in this work. So this matters to be said. So Dr. Grant Warner is the Bank of America Endowed Professor of Entrepreneurship and the director of the Center for Black Entrepreneurship at Spelman College, Morehouse College. So thank you for joining us, Grant. Justin Conway is Vice President of Investment Partnerships for Calvert Impact, and he'll explain what that is. A real powerhouse in this work. Pearl Wicks is the Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer of Hope Credit Union, which is really one of the stellar organizations in this space, and we're so glad they can join us. And Ann McMikel is our Executive Director of Shared Interest, and she has 20 years of experience in global nonprofit leadership and management. So welcome all. And Grant, I'll turn to you first to give us your elevator speech of who you are and what your role is.
Sure, thank you. So again, my name is Grant Warner. I currently serve as the Executive Director for the Center for Black Entrepreneurship. But I came into this position, as an entrepreneur. So even during my graduate studies, I started a couple of companies, one, ConnectJoy, that operated for 15 years. And in that process, I learned more about myself in the world than I learned getting the PhD, certainly. Um, but I also learned some of the challenges that exist for Black entrepreneurs. We had a product and customers were challenged to raise funds, and others who were also capital raising with us, who had family members who were more well connected, were able to raise money despite not having a product or having customers. And that's what kind of led me into this work. I've been in an HBCU environment for almost 20 years, working on commercialization and entrepreneurship. And we're focused at the Center for Black Entrepreneurship, or the CBE, on closing that gap between entrepreneurs and capital sources.
Wonderful. Thanks so much. Pearl, a little background from yourself.
Great. Thank you, Tim. It's great to be here with everybody. As you stated, I'm Pearl Wicks. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for HOPE. That's a Hope Credit Union, Hope Enterprise Corporation, Hope Policy Institute. I've been in the financial services space for better than 30 years. 16 of those years have been here at Hope. But I've worked across the financial services industry, really helping people realize their goals of home ownership, access to capital, be that by way of a car loan or a business loan or just your basic checking account.
Mm.
And here at Hope, what I do, I work directly with our program areas. That includes our retail space on the credit unions, all of our branch networks across 5 states. And I work with our consumer lending, our small business lending, and mortgage lending. And what that really does mean is that it just gives me an opportunity every day to really meet people where they are.
Mhm.
We see people that, have shied away from financial institutions, especially the larger financial institutions, for various reasons. And some of them being haven't had the awareness and the exposure that is available to them. And some have gone into those spaces and not liked the results that they were given. So the opportunity that I have here at Hope is to meet people where they are, to first of all welcome them into an environment that will hear their story and
Yep.
listen to their story, but then be able to provide them with access to affordable products and services that meet them in their need to grow and prosper and help them, realize dreams that they have for themselves and their families in their financial futures. And so,
Mm.
very excited to be a part of this conversation today. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Pearl. And Ann, can we turn to you?
Sure. Thank you, Tim. I am beyond thrilled to be a member of this esteemed panel. I, as Tim mentioned, come from a global health and development background. I spent a number of years at the American Cancer Society, and then moved on to other smaller nonprofits, all with a focus on empowering the voice of women. And joined Shared Interest about a year or so ago, and lead a phenomenal team of experts and leaders who are unapologetic about banking on women, banking on other small and medium-sized enterprises that are true engines of sustainable development in South and now Southern Africa. And so couldn't be more pleased to be talking about the topic of what we're all brought here to discuss, because I think we're all finding that these are really unique times that we're living in, and we have to sort of reset and figure out what is it that we can be doing to partner differently, to invest differently, and to hold up voices that don't normally get a spotlight shown on their, particularly their business successes. Thank you.
Thank you. Justin, we'll turn to you.
Sure. Thanks, Tim, and everyone. Happy to be here. I'm Justin Conway with Calvert Impact. Really pleased to be part of the conversation, and like that, we're uniquely trying to bridge the domestic challenges as well as the international challenges and opportunities, because I got my start in the international development and microfinance side of things before moving back to the States here now for over 20 years. And I was fortunate to get to meet Tim and Donna Katzen had shared interest, and other leaders in this space, including Bill and others at Hope, who helped me understand kind of bridging those worlds, marrying the international interests I had then with the things going on in domestic communities. So I also get to do that at Calvert Impact, where we are an impact investment manager, helping people and institutions invest for racial, gender, economic, and climate justice. So we build investment products that are addressing our urgent global challenges like racial inequality that we're talking about today. And we were really trying to get capital working in communities through community development financial institutions, affordable housing developers, microfinance investment vehicles like shared interests. So just happy to be here with people and organizations that I really respect, and I know I'll learn some things too.
Great. So now we're going to turn, it's a softball question in a way, but it's one of the most important ones because we want you to each describe how your organization in its work addresses the priority of racial justice and economic empowerment. And please share some examples. Pearl, I wanted to start with you because you were already talking a little bit about the impact of Hope on housing, and for example. But tell that story or any others that you wish that would help listeners to understand how you are helping transform an unjust system.
Thank you, Tim. And like you said, as I stated, Hope Credit Union for better than 30 years have been supporting Black families, homeowners, and entrepreneurs across the Deep South. We serve in 5 states across the Deep South. And we do that through several ways. We provide access to financial services. We aggregate resources. We engage in advocacy and helping people not be limited by where they were born or their race or gender, from being able to prosper. I'll talk about a story. It'll be in Mississippi, small town in Mississippi, home of Mississippi Valley State University, where Jerry Rice played. And so in that town, even if we pulled all of the assets together of the community, it wouldn't be enough to really fund things that the community needs, schools, access to good running water, access to financial products and services. And one of the stories that I'll never forget is that we opened a checking account for a young lady that was 100 years old. That was her very first account at a financial institution, and not because that she, couldn't go anywhere else, but she didn't trust going anywhere else. We moved into that town, and we actually set up the first 24-hour ATM in that community. And so things that many of us may take for granted, people being able to get access to their money through, an ATM 24 hours was something that town did not have. So being able to pull together resources and from investors and funders and just getting on the ground, really listening to the community, because the community people know what they need. They know what it takes to get their systems working and their schools working, but they need investments to help them do that. And that's one of the things that we do at Hope is, like I said, bring in resources, bring in investments so that 100-year-old young lady doesn't have to, feel like that she couldn't go into her local financial institution and get an account. But more importantly, for people behind her offspring, her grandkids, her great grandkids now know that there is a place, an institution that is there to serve them, to, as I said, meet them where they are, to help them uncover what their financial goals are, and then help them get there. Because I think it's important to have the awareness, but it's also important to work with the community to then develop the type product that they need, and they're not put into a cookie cutter type of product. So that's very important, and I think that that's the work that we do at Hope. Like I said, just serving our mission for better than 30 years.
Yep. Thanks so much, Pearl. And let's jump across the ocean to Southern Africa. And why don't you address the same question? How do you feel that shared interest is helping empower disenfranchised Black communities in Southern Africa?
Sure, Tim. Uh, what we do at Shared Interest is work with a community of stakeholders that have a real interest in unlocking the innovation that lives inside of Black women entrepreneurs and other small and medium-sized enterprises. How do we do it? We do it through our nonprofit guarantee fund that is mobilized primarily by social impact or socially responsible investors in the US who also share a commitment to addressing racial and economic and gender justice. So through our guarantee fund, which now stands at about 12 or $13 million, we are able to work with lending partners in 5 countries in Southern Africa, South Africa, Malawi, Mozambique, Eswatini, and Zambia, through program consultants on the ground that have expertise in sourcing small businesses that are critical to the region's development. And so through our guarantee fund and through the expertise that we engage on the ground through our newest model, we're able to support the very businesses that serve at the intersection of climate mitigation and women's entrepreneurship and
Right.
obviously agriculture. Our 2 newer areas of priority are in fintech and in social enterprises. And just a real quick snapshot of one of the examples of our work in action is we're providing affordable housing in South Africa under our new model. We were able to work with a partner on the ground called LEAD, who in conjunction with other partners are focused on providing about 470 units of affordable housing in South Africa over the next few years. 60% of that will help with housing women and youth. And it really sort of serves as a way that we can be addressing what seems to be an intractable problem with putting together really synergized partnership solutions. So
Right.
we're really excited about the work and really excited about ways in which we can be talking about how a guarantee fund can make so much happen in terms of unlocking local capital.
I'm going to turn to Grant, but you described the magic bullet at the end there and a guarantee fund. So it's not like we put the money into that housing project. We go to banks who would be reluctant to make those loans, provide guarantees that frees them up to do so. So it's very interesting. Grant, over to you. Same kind of question about how you and your center work on racial justice and economic empowerment.
Yeah. So, the idea of racial justice and economic empowerment are, inextricably linked. We had some students with us in San Francisco last week. I was at a UNCF program, and we asked, well, when you think about the I Have a Dream speech, what comes to mind? And for most people, what comes to mind is the refrain, right? I have a dream, and he talks about his 4 little children, and they should be measured by the content of their character, not by the color of their skin. But that was really towards the end of the speech. Towards the beginning of the speech, he mentions, well, we're 100 years past slavery. Black people are still not free. Black people live in a lonely island of poverty amidst this vast ocean of material wealth. So we've come to the Capitol to cash a check, right? And those words are very intentional, right? Linking the struggle for racial justice and economic empowerment. And that's what the CBE was born out of, right? The reason the CBE exists is the commitments that were made after the murder of George Floyd. So, as I mentioned before, the mission for the CBE is closing the gap between Black entrepreneurs and capital and commercial markets. As a college university setting, we do that through human capital development. So we provide an on-ramp for entrepreneurships for our students. We have minors that operate on both campuses. We have extracurricular programming that engages them with the community while still allowing them to build their skills. And it really becomes a sandbox for them to learn the mechanics of entrepreneurship, some of the block and tackle. We also have mechanism for alums and adult learners also to re-engage with entrepreneurship through our online certificate program. And then finally, the center focuses on research, looking at best practices for venture development, capital deployment, policies that impact Black wealth development. So the thing that I would also mention, given the comments that Ann made about the fund, is that very intentionally, the Center for Black Entrepreneurship has this training focus, but we also have a sister arm through the Black Economic Alliance that provides an entrepreneurs fund for people that participate in CBE programming for investment. Again, really trying to close this gap that exists between entrepreneurs and capital sources.
Thanks so much, Grant. Justin, Calvert Impact's been doing this for what you're going to describe as for a very long time, and you do so much on international development, gender empowerment, but also racial justice is a high priority for you. So zero in on that. Tell us a little bit about how Calvert Impact has put some of your investors' dollars to work to empower economically disenfranchised communities and address racial justice.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. So Calvert's Impact's mission is rooted in addressing structural inequities, and so addressing racial inequity is an explicit focus. For every investment we make, we're evaluating it in terms of its diversity, equity, and inclusion practices. We call it justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion, and JEDI practices. We collect demographic data on everyone's leadership, boards, clients, things like that. And since ultimately our capital is serving mostly people in communities of color, we expect to see that diversity reflected in our community partners organizations as well, so that they are really part of the community, as well as in our own organization. So our community investment note, as you alluded to, has been doing that since 1995 and supporting organizations that combat structural racism in low-income communities in the U.S. and abroad. Most of our U.S. Portfolio partners, including a number of affordable housing developers and community development financial institutions like Hope, they view their mission as a response to structural racism. As Pearl said, they're really trying to ensure equitable access to housing, healthcare, education, quality jobs, and wealth building opportunities. And with the entrepreneurship focus of this conversation, we look into our stats. 92% of the small businesses in the U.S. that we support are owned by entrepreneurs of color. And then internationally, racial justice takes many different contexts. And so we're certainly proud to have partnered with groups like Shared Interests over the years that are addressing this well in their local contexts, and South Africa for sure is focused, and now kind of more broadly in Southern Africa. And then the other thing I'd say just about our strategies at Calvert Impact is that beyond the community investment note, since 2020 and the pandemic that you mentioned at the top and the challenges there, we've launched a number of small business recovery funds in partnership with community development financial institutions. And these were intentionally designed to address the inequities with how capital is traditionally allocated and accessed. And we've been successful so far in reaching populations traditionally excluded, including very small, sometimes considered unbankable businesses of less than 10 employees, less than $1 million in revenue, and over 2/3 of them are owned by women and or people of color.
Right. So Justin, just say another sentence. This is almost 30 years then of work, but this is investment dollars that you actually make a loan or invest in projects. Maybe clarify that. And then you've got over 150 such investments out there globally?
Right. So we have over 7,000. 98% of our investors are individuals. And then we're really trying to connect them to community-based organizations like Hope and Shared Interests that are really actively working in the communities to both provide the financial assistance that we can support, but also the technical assistance that is needed in communities. So we're trying to be one of the connecting points.
That's right. Thank you for clarifying that. So, Ann and Justin, this is more of a quick question, maybe just one example. But as we all know, impact investing strategies are diverse. And we've seen faith-based investors who've been leading this work. ICCR, where I work, is 52 years old. They've been involved in analyzing their investments, screening them, doing advocacy as shareholders, and community development investing. But I wondered if either of you, both of you rather, could give an example, maybe one or one and a half, of faith-based communities who are leading the charge to promote this kind of racial justice impact investing. Justin, can we go to you first? You have some examples of that?
Sure. So yeah, I think there's a lot of exciting things happening in the faith-based investor space, and so much more collaboration now. And I'd be remiss if I didn't recognize one of my colleagues, Amanda Joseph, who has been a leader in this. But some longstanding groups like ICCR that have been leaders in this for decades are now complemented by other regional and national and global organizations and groups now working internationally or globally, I should say, kind of like Faith Invest are organizing faiths in action around the world. And the Global Impact Investing Network has a faith investor hub with resources. And there's also organizations now kind of within many of the faiths centered on, specific, whether Jewish or Christian, Catholic, Islamic, working on sustainable and impact in investing. And I think one of the exciting things we've seen investors do is, make more specific allocation commitments to impact investing or community development investing, where they're saying we're going to commit 1% or more of our assets to human flourishing and or racial justice. So there are now a number of mutual funds that are doing this. I think on the ground, one of the exciting things is that churches, many in BIPOC communities in the U.S., are seeing the anchor role that they play and transforming some of their real estate assets into economic renewals. I was you see this organization across the street from my house that turned kind of a vacant parking lot into one of the larger affordable housing developments in Washington, D.C. And they got community investor capital in order to do that. But they've now turned, a parking lot that was used on Sundays into 183 units of deeply affordable housing. And that has become kind of a community hub in my community in DC for all of our community meetings and everything. So it's not just helping the residents there. It's become kind of the central hub for a lot of the community.
Great example. And any examples you could give of faith-based investors making a difference, say in shared interest life?
I don't think there would be a shared interest without the faith-based community. We partner quite well and are in strong alignment with our mission to advance racial, economic, and gender justice. About half, actually a little more than half of our social impact investment fund comes from the faith-based community. On the ground, what that means is that we can unlock capital fourfold in the places that we work. I don't think we'd be able to work in places like Malawi. Most people don't even know where that is if you were to ask them, but we're doing really meaningful work, currently working with the former President Joyce Banda, for instance, on providing access to capital for women farmers and other rural businesses that are headed by women. So that is a really important part of how we do what we do. And then, even in terms of how we raise awareness, we're working really closely with the faith-based community. Archbishop Desmond Tutu formerly served as our chair of our board of advisors. Now his daughter, Reverend Naomi Tutu, is serving in this capacity to keep his vision and his dream alive, particularly as it relates to empowering women and youth. And so I'll be talking a little bit about a new initiative that we have with historically Black colleges and universities. And it's because we have such a strong commitment from and partnership with the faith-based community.
Great examples of how faith-based dollars making a difference in communities. Pearl, you answered a lot of these example. You gave a lot of these examples earlier, but wanted to just draw out any others that you had about how Hope Credit Union is helping create affordable housing or addressing climate change or job creation. Any stories you'd like to share about how this works?
Yes, Tim, thank you. As you talked about and I'll go back to, you talked about the faith-based communities. And so just for note, Hope Credit Union was started in the basement of a church.
Hmm.
And so started to, bring the members of that church access to affordable services on every corner. As members drove the church, there were the payday lenders and all of the predatory practices. So the credit union got started in a church basement, and by faith-based leaders coming together saying, we want better for the community, and utilizing what they had to support the opening of Hope. We work with in Memphis, Tennessee. We work with the Black Clergy Collaborative of Memphis, and their work also is intended to help keep their members from predatory lending. So we partnered with them and really to bring awareness to the members that come to those churches, but also to the broader community of the need and the opportunity to not have to go to predatory lenders. And so when you think about the access to affordable housing, climate, once again, that's the work that we've done for over 30 years, and bringing together resources to help serve in the communities that we serve in that don't have the proper capital and assets to move forward. In our lending program here at Hope, better than 80% of our mortgage loans go to first-time home buyers and people of color and women head of households. So to be able to do that and put a family in a home is the beginning of building what we definitely consider generational wealth. Being able to have that home as your asset, and the story continues to be told that so many people just didn't know that they had a place that they could even go to get a mortgage. That's the first time home buyers. And so that's the work that we do basically on the ground every day is bringing people into an institution that is there to help them improve their life. And so be it homeowners, be it entrepreneurs, we work with churches and schools and businesses, which are anchor institutions in the communities we serve, as well as, and I know you talked about HBCUs. We have programs with HBCUs because they are the anchor institutions in their communities, and they are usually sitting right in the middle of communities that do not have access to affordable products and services, to affordable homes. And so working with them to use the resources that they have and bring in resources to help better the community overall.
Yep. So Pearl, you have to refresh my memory here, but I know several years ago, the federal government stepped up and identified the importance of community development, financial institutions, and put monies into those. And was Hope the recipient of some of those investment dollars?
Absolutely, Tim. If I'm on the same page with you, you're talking about the ESIP, Emergency Capital Investment Plan. And so Hope certainly was a recipient, and we very grateful. We received about $93 million, and to take that money and put it back into the communities that we serve. And it looks like more first-time homeowners getting into a house. It looked like Black entrepreneurs and small business owners, being able to sustain their businesses. And it looks like people that are unbanked and underbanked being able to have access to your basic financial services, a basic checking account, basic savings account, but to build that relationship and to see them grow from, a $25-50 savings account to buying that first car,
Mhm.
to, buying that home, but then even starting that business. And so, yes, we were recipients of ESIP and are working hard to continue to take that investment and couple it with
Yeah.
other investments and bring, capital into these communities that we serve.
Yeah. And that was a new program, wasn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
But you were not getting that kind of federal money before. Grant, you're so familiar with the cases of police brutality leading to louder demands for police reform in the communities. But these cases also shine a spotlight on the structural problems that you deal with, economic disparities in the Black communities. So, wondered if you could share some thoughts about how to address those issues and how you might be doing it in your community outreach.
Yeah, sure. As I said before, kind of the economic disparities and racial justice are intertwined, in my view. And so when we think about kind of our, how we address these, maybe not in our community outreach, but with our community outreach efforts, it's really a comprehensive strategy to promote community careers, contracts, capital, right, to help close the wealth gap in Black communities. The CBE itself is a partnership between Morehouse, Spelman, and the Black Economic Alliance. So the breadth of those partnerships highlights the breadth of approaches that we take to this issue. So, for example, this past week, the Spelman Innovation Lab hosted an HBCU game jam that brought together dozens of HBCUs and their students to provide an on-ramp for students to learn game design, explore developing and launching their own games. And some of this fundamental skills development is a pathway to lucrative careers that we think help to close that wealth gap. On the topic of colleges and universities, particularly HBCUs, being kind of foundational to their communities, we're also not just trying to be an ebony tower where we support just our student community. The Morehouse Innovation and Entrepreneurship Center here hosts a number of community programs that provide Black and women-owned small businesses, technical assistance, and access to capital through connections with customers. In one example, providing a pathway to contracting opportunities and entering the supply chain of large companies. But they also work with CDFIs, a local CDFI here, ACE, and that drives impact. One of the recent stats that they shared is that they had impacted over 150 businesses with one program, created 325 new jobs, helped them access $7.5 million of new capital, and that generated over $22 million of revenue, right? So again, ways that the university can bring together its strengths, right? The talent pool, the connections with industries, access to capital to really help promote growth and change in the community. And the last thing I'll talk about is the Black Economic Alliance. I kind of referenced it before, but this is a coalition of Black business leaders and allies that work on policy to close the funding gap. So they've been an instrumental partner for the CBE in terms of thought leadership, but also in fundraising. So as I mentioned, they have this sibling project called the Entrepreneurs Fund, sibling to the CBE, that invests in Black businesses. So a portion of those funds are directed to the CBE, right? Businesses that have engaged with the CBE, but all of it is directed towards Black entrepreneurs. So really providing a pathway to investment capital. So again, as we think about the outreach strategy, it really is to promote community. How do we drive stronger connections between talent and opportunity? Careers, how do we get people into high growth careers, not so that they necessarily become a lifelong employee, but if they do choose to do that, they're doing well. But they are able to gather skills that they can then use to launch their own companies, and then using our connections to capital and contracts to support small business ventures and entrepreneurs.
Yep. Thank you so much. Justin and Ann, I'm going to turn to you again. And you've both been dealing with this question, but Justin, I wanted you to think about a couple of examples, like specific examples, where Calvert had made an investment that you particularly think is significant in light of the conversation we're having today on racial justice. And likewise, Ann, maybe you can think of a couple of guarantee projects in specific that you could share. So we'll turn to you, Justin, briefly to give us a couple of those examples.
Sure, absolutely. So many examples across the world, and since Ann's teed up here, she'll probably can do a great job on the international ones, focus more on racial equity. But here in the U.S., the first investment Calvert Impact Capital ever made was in Portland, Oregon, to a group called Central City Concern, really trying to address help people that are struggling with addiction, substance abuse, and poverty. And so it's an organization that provides holistic care, trying to help people get off the streets, get into any supportive housing that they need, get any type of the health care that they might need, help them understand, start to get some volunteer opportunities and job training and things like that. And that's an organization that we continue to invest in now, 27, 28 years later. So it's been really interesting to kind of see that really on the ground and supporting largely people of color through that program. I think one of our bigger initiatives recently has been in the city of Chicago. And we have a partnership there with MacArthur Foundation and the Chicago Community Trust, really focused on raising and deploying $100 million for the needs in Chicago. And even before 2020, the focus became communities of color there, and worked on a study and saw that really the needs there were equity capital, and there was a huge gap there. So kind of the second half of the funding for that all went to help entrepreneurs of color there. And a final, just a last one, kind of building from what Pearl said and how the government's been such a supporter of this and hope, and the ESIP program that she referenced. We're launching a new fund called the Mission Driven Bank Fund in partnership with Elizabeth Park, that's really supporting minority depository institutions and CDFI, Community Development Financial Institutions certified banks that can help address the racial wealth gap and build a more equitable banking sector there. So it's a strong connection to what the leadership Hope has done on the credit union side and their work in the South. We're going to be trying to do some more of that through the community development and minority depository banks.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. And Ann, some Southern Africa examples that you want to highlight, a couple?
Yeah, sure. So we recently started implementing against a new model around which we are starting to see some real traction. Our new model is really focused on working with program experts in each country who have an expertise in identifying the kinds of small and medium-sized enterprises that can really benefit from scaling through a guarantee fund structure. And so just in the past year, we have implemented about $4 million in guarantee, in implementing our guarantee fund that is unlocking about $12 million in local capital. And some of those projects are working with institutions that are highly respected by both the government and the community. In Malawi in particular, we're working with an entity called the Malawi Agriculture and Industrial Corporation that is specifically working with us as well as other entities, some of which are funded by the government, to unlock capital for agribusinesses. And that translates to food security. We talk a lot about farm to table. Well, Malawi and Africa is really where agribusiness can really take off. And so we're seeing that by helping to de-risk the environment for smallholder farmers in particular, we're helping to provide a solution to food security. In Zambia, the model is particularly interesting because we're not only unlocking sort of bank capital, we're unlocking investor capital from Zambians. And so a big part of what we are focused on is unlocking capital in the countries that we work. And so our guarantee fund is doing just that. During the pandemic, we piloted work with one of our beneficiaries called Endowed. They are a non-banking financial institution that works with other small businesses. And I think all of us can appreciate how difficult it was for the small business community during the pandemic. And Indie Credit was one of those organizations that was working with small businesses that were critical to the local economy, but also working with them to make sure that they were structuring loans and packages that were responsive to the unique challenges of the pandemic. So through that work, through the work that we're doing in Zambia, we're not only unlocking sort of the capital that is important from the banks, but also from Zambian investors. And I shared earlier the work that we're doing in South Africa that's focused on inclusive housing. And then if I can just share a really exciting project that I think we're really excited about that will allow us to work meaningfully with historically Black colleges and universities, of which I'm a proud alum. I attended Spelman College. We recently got funding from the NASDAQ Foundation that will allow us to work with partners like Grant here in Atlanta to expose students of HBCUs to the world of social impact investing and ESG investing. I've been doing nonprofit work for a number of years, and I have to say I was ignorant to this space. And so if we can arm students that have a real interest in entrepreneurship, social justice, in making a difference in their community with this form of investing in our community, I think we can be helping the next generation to be leaders in economic justice. And so I'm really excited about this. We're looking to pilot this with about 4 or 5 universities. We've already had promising conversations with Spelman. Obviously, we've got a member of our board from Spelman, Morehouse, and Clark Atlanta University. And really excited about where this pilot might go.
So the term you used about unlocking capital is something that, of course, is a theme for this whole conversation. Hope unlocks capital in their communities. Justin is unlocking investor capital to go into Calvert Impact, which then goes out into the communities, and you've been doing the same. But I like your last point, Ann, too. This is unlocking knowledge and imagination that would help maybe students decide, boy, this is fascinating. Let me look at this as a future vocation too. Oh, so Grant, let's go back to you too, because you've been dealing with Black entrepreneurship for quite some time. And I wondered if you just want to share a couple of thoughts about opportunities you see for young people, particularly, well, you could probably talk about a number of sectors, but the technology sector, for example. So,
yes, I just returned. I just returned from an event in San Francisco hosted by UNCF, where the CBE helped to co-develop a workshop that was used to run students through a design thinking session, right? So we'll come up thematically with industries you might have an interest in. How does that intersect with the life of a typical college-age student? What are some challenges they have around that? And use that to generate ideas that culminated in a pitch over 2.5 days, something like that. So we had debated before that design thinking exercise started. Well, maybe we should guide students to leverage AI, right? Things like ChatGPT, et cetera, emerging technologies, but decided against it in the interest of simplicity. Just kind of let their minds wander to where they wanted to solve problems and how they wanted to solve problems. And the programming team, we did not serve as the judges, so somebody else served as the judges. But it just so happened that the winning teams did look at how they could leverage AI to help people acquire the help that they need and make better decisions. So this was across education, financial literacy, and personal finance. So things that do have kind of a double bottom line impact. But the whole weekend was really about learning, emphasizing the importance of data sciences, artificial intelligence, machine learning, analytics, et cetera, and how that might help in driving multiple industries. So in addition to the traditional tech sector, they also visited the San Francisco Giants, and the GM and their CTO really helped to highlight how all of these technologies were really driving decision making. So I think this whole idea around data sciences, we have a data sciences institute at the AUC. I think that's a very important area. And of course, on campus, there's big push around the metaverse, how that can be used to help with training and education. Across HBCUs broadly, there's lots of interest in blockchain. And the killer application for blockchain may not have been decided yet, right? Likely still under development. Might not be the coins. You hear a lot of news around the coins and the way that they've recently destroyed wealth. But they're also entrepreneurs exploring how you could use blockchain technology to facilitate other things. Met with a startup that was looking at how you can unlock commercialization and facilitate the transfer of IP with smart contracts supported by the blockchain. So who knows how that will go?
Right.
Uh,
Wow.
yeah, but there are other opportunities in climate tech, health tech, et cetera. But I think data science applications are accessible because of lower startup costs. So, makes them attractive for our communities.
There's some great opportunities there. Great. Thanks for sharing that specifically. Well, as we wind down, we wanted to hear, Pearl, for example, did you have any ideas about how to build a stronger connection or a pipeline with his HBCUs? You talked about how Hope was formed in a church, but how about your outreach to HBCUs? I know that's a real part of your work as well.
Absolutely, Tim. And as has already been said, HBCUs are anchor institutions in the communities that they sit in. And our work at Hope certainly extends to our historically Black colleges and universities. Just a couple of weeks ago, early February, we hosted an economic mobility forum and brought in leaders from the Federal Reserve, bank presidents, of course, Bill Bynum, the CEO of leading community development financial institution, and CEOs and leaders from all across the financial and economic and racial justice spectrum. But the key attendees at that forum we had students from about 10 of the HBCUs in our area. And as I said, we serve in Alabama, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Tennessee. And the beauty of those students being in that room, they were hungry for this information. One student shared, that had she not been at the university and had an opportunity to come to that forum, she wouldn't know even, what questions to ask. And she spoke very candidly, but how do I now take this back to the people that's in my community, to students or to people that may not be attending college? How do I do this? And that question was asked all across a 2-day event. We started with the forum on the campus of my alma mater, Jackson State University. And we moved over to Tougaloo College, another HBCU in the city of Jackson. But they were able to really listen and engage with leaders in the financial services industry. So the first thing that did was it showed them that people that look just like them are in these positions, and so can they be. But it also gave them an opportunity to ask questions. How do I get here? How do I bring this back to my community? And then the following day at Tougaloo College, they were able to participate in a career fair to learn about careers, at these large, financial institutions, at the CFPB, and just learning about and having the opportunity to shake hands, be on the same stage, be in the same room with these leaders that they may only have ever seen on TV or read about. Bringing them into that space to be able to have that conversation, we know that they're going to take it back.
Yes,
And
yes.
they're going to grow their communities. They're going to, they're going to hold each other and us accountable. We learned that too. They're going to, okay, so we've had this event. Okay, what next? When's the next event? When am I going to have an opportunity to talk to some more leaders? Because I want to be a leader that, works in this space. And they learned about how so many things connect in a community.
Wow.
So access to affordable housing, access to, affordable food.
Yeah.
Access to healthcare, and access to really continue to grow and educate themselves in their community. They don't want to leave the community. They want to bring back to the community what they learn. And so the work that we do with HBCUs, across this footprint is so critical and so important, because we are, we're building the next generation of leaders. And And I think they're learning how to, get deeper into the community, which is one of the things that we do is we get deep in the community. Let's listen to the community.
Yeah.
Let's hear from them. But the key thing is building that trust so that their stories are told, their stories are taken care of, but their stories are also used to highlight and show what can happen when the right investment is made into a community, into a child. When the right group of people get together at a table, those kids saw themselves at that table. And I think that's the beauty of what we do, and what we all have an opportunity to do more of, and to really just continue to bring investments to our communities. And I'll say this last, Hope, we started a transformational deposit program. And this is a way for, investors and individuals to make deposits into Hope that will help us to strengthen the communities. And so, as I said, socially responsible investing, flexible deposit accounts, empowering, opportunities for everybody, and promoting racial and gender equity. So when someone takes out a transformational deposit, it's at a lower rate of return, but it is a huge impact for us to use and have such a great impact into the community. So
wonderful. I love that term, Pearl, a transformational deposit.
It does exactly what it says. It transforms the community. And so we use that to offer, investment into Hope, that we, invest into the communities.
Well, we're going to steal that line. We're talking about transformational investments, aren't we?
That's right.
Yeah. So
that's exactly correct.
So as we end, I just want to thank everybody very, very much, but also note that for those listening in, if you the resources would include obviously the websites of Hope and Shared Interest and the work you do, Grant, and also the Calvert Impact. So these are a wealth of examples of how this transformational investing, I like that almost as much as impact investing, is at work. So thank you all very much for this participating in this first shared interest racial justice conversation. We appreciate it, and we look forward to seeing many of you who are listening in again on this series. Thanks again.